Okay, everyone, thank you so much for joining. We have a great program for you today. We have two fantastic volunteers that have done a great deal for March of Dimes and March for Babies. So we're very thankful to them for their time and effort into this sharing their best practices. My name is Scott Archambault. I'm the Vice President of March for Babies for March of Dimes. And this is the last in a series of talks that we've decided to do to our team captains and some others to walkers to try to help answer questions, share best practices, and just make everyone's campaign as solid as possible. Our two guest speakers today, one is Mark Marsters, who is Senior Vice President of Group Operations, and Joe Cranston, Business Project Manager and Group Voluntary Products for Cigna out of Pennsylvania. Mark is a member of the Chapter Board of Directors there in Pennsylvania, and then Joe serves as the chair of all Pennsylvania Cigna teams, which, by the way, raises over, I believe, $250,000 for March of Dimes. While that is extremely impressive, don't worry about if your particular effort is not quite that large, because a lot of the concepts that they'll go over really can be applied to an office of 10, as much as a campus of 10,000. So we're going to talk about the importance of co-captains, lead volunteers, walker recruitment, online fundraising, company ambassadors, and how to make March for Babies a big deal within your company. So with that, I will turn it over to Mark to begin the call.
All right. Thank you very much, Scott. I'm actually calling you from Los Angeles today, and I just want to share a little bit of sort of background information for you around the Cigna campaign and some of the efforts that we put into it. Joe Cranston will walk down through some of the more specific best practices, but Cigna is a healthcare company that focuses on improving the health, well-being, and sense of security of all Americans, and we are always particularly interested in the health of babies. We've been a 19-year national partner with the March of Dimes and have raised over $27 million as a corporation in our support of the program. I'm actually here in Los Angeles today with our CEO, recognizing one of our offices, and I thought actually it would be a nice little story to start the meeting with and talk a little bit about the power of a few creating and generating substantial amount of commitment and resources for the fight against prematurity. The office that we have here in Los Angeles has roughly 200 to 300 employees in it. They raised last year $34,000. It was a 210% increase in their participation from 2011, and a 310% increase in the funds that they raised. So a fairly small office of a couple hundred people really coming together and producing a pretty powerful impact in a very small setting. The CEO is actually here to recognize the office because as part of our March of Dimes campaign, the CEO offers a luncheon for any site or for the site that has the greatest increase in participation in walkership, if that's a term. We like to think it is, but this office had significant improvement in its walkership for the campaign in 2012. So we'll be lunching and recognizing the office in Los Angeles for Cigna today. But it's a very small way to gain some real commitment across our national organization and some competition amongst folks. I would also add on a personal note, I have been the national chair for Cigna for the March of Dimes. I've been the Philadelphia chair for the March of Dimes, and I have participated with the national March of Dimes in events all over the country for the last several years. My own personal story actually began here in California, not far from where I'm sitting today, where my daughter Abby was born. And I think it's always important as we talk through sort of the walks and the fundraising and things to remember why we do it. And it's particularly pertinent today that I'm sitting here not only recognizing our Los Angeles office, but about 10 miles away from where my own daughter was born with significant birth defects. And she lived for about 3 years. The physicians told us at the beginning this was going to be a severe situation, that it would likely cause a significant amount of problems for my family, for my career, and likely cause bankruptcy. And those might seem rather harsh things to say to a new father, but frankly, I was happy that he opened my eyes right from the beginning. And I think for all of us who have either been through this type of an experience or had a child with prematurity, both the financial costs, emotional tolls that it takes on families and the babies, obviously themselves, is substantial. And so the fight that we have and the fight that we continue may not present itself in front of us every day, but we have to think back and remember all of those families who, for every day that goes by, they're dealing with an intensely difficult situation, trying to save the life or improve the life of their child. So with that, I would just say we are extremely excited to be here today. And that Cigna has been a long-time supporter, as I mentioned it. Our campaign activities are in full swing across the country for all of the Cigna offices, and we hope to enjoy a great deal of competition and community, but also a commitment to help increase the funds in the battle against prematurity. So with that, I'd like to introduce one of my favorite people, Joe Cranston. Joe has taken on a new role in our organization around March of Dimes this year. I always say there are roughly 4 elements that make a campaign successful. The first is leadership. Joe brings a tremendous amount of leadership. He, too, has a personal experience associated with the March of Dimes, with his own family, and that, I think, helps drive his interpersonal commitment. The second is engagement, having somebody who's willing to go out and engage various people, offices, groups. And Joe is a very gregarious guy, and that's an important element of making sure that the campaign is out in front of everyone. The third is really structure. Like any organization, if you don't have structure, it's hard to really accomplish your goals. And Joe will talk a little bit about how we've restructured our Pennsylvania approach this year so that it has a more focal point of leadership across the 6 or 7 sites and 4,000 employees we have spread across the site. And the last thing is ease. I think a great deal of people want to participate, want to commit, would like to donate, but oftentimes, for whatever reason, there are barriers to them either walking or finding a way to donate. And our approach has always been make it as easy as possible for folks, whether it's an online participation, a direct participation, or no walking at all, but some sort of financial commitment to the organization. So those are some of the elements that I see. And with that, Joe, I'm going to hand it over to you.
Great. Thanks, Mark. I really appreciate it. And I also appreciate Scott, you and Susan inviting us to join this call today. A couple of topics that Scott said I was going to touch on. First is really going to talk about the captains. Mark mentioned as well that I do have a personal story. I have 4-year-old twins that were born at 28 weeks, and it was pretty much of a shock to us. And at that time, I was definitely aware of the work that March of Dimes has done over the years, but that really hit home to me during that time. My twins were in the NICU for, I would say, it's 3 months early, and then they were in the NICU for over 2 months. So just understanding the work that the March of Dimes has done and that impact it had to my family makes it, just everything hits at home. The second piece, and I say this often, is when you look at being able to fundraise and get people behind a cause like the March of Dimes that we really believe in, I always say it's a full contact sport. This is not something that you can do from the sidelines. You have to be proactive, you have to be energetic, and you have to be engaged. And that leads me into the topic about what we need or what Cigna looks for when we have captains. As Mark mentioned, we have individuals and sites across the United States, and I'm actually sharing the Pennsylvania offices, but those team captains are critical because what the team captains do is they are actually going to drive the vision and goals. At Cigna, we have a mission to support the community, and one of our big events that we do every year is the support of the March of Dimes. So having that vision, having that mission, and then tying that to how we can get employees and leaders engaged is a key piece of what we try to drive home on a day-to-day basis. With those strong leaders, so the individual captains that we try to bring to the table, we look for those goals of leadership. They're proactive, they're energetic, and probably most important, they believe in what we're doing. So we really try to look for those qualities across the board. And then with that comes the planning aspect. You almost have to look at these campaigns if you want to do it really well. It's a planning exercise, and then how do you execute on it? So having those really key project management skills, I think, help across the board. So what we try to do at Cigna is once we get a very good leader from a team captain perspective, we encourage each group to have steering committee members that are accountable and help drive the activities. It's not how we look at it, it's not a one person that's driving everything. I mean, a site like Philadelphia has over 1,100 people in that organization. So it takes a committed team that is just as energetic as the team captain to run through these things and to make sure that we're successful. The other key thing, and I'm going to mention this a few times because I think it's absolutely critical, is to garner that senior management support. What we found is we definitely have a process where we get the individual employees engaged, and I'll speak to that, but having influential leaders such as Mark and all the way up to our CEO, David Cordani, involved with this makes things so much easier because they are engaged. They do want to get behind it. And one of the things we've done, and I would suggest as a group, whether you're a small site of 10 or 20 or a huge organization like Cigna, is we actually work and encourage, and we're doing this for the first time in Pennsylvania across all the groups, is to really sit down and have one-on-one conversations with the influential leaders to get their teams behind the March of Dimes and the whole campaign. And what we ask them to do is to look for this to be a team-building event. This is something we can do outside. They can sign up for the walk, support it any way they can, but when you bring that team aspect to it, it really drives home the mission and what we're looking to do. And last but not least, from a captain's perspective, it's soliciting feedback from our employees. What we try to do at Cigna on a regular basis is not just to get to that comfort level, but how do we improve from year to year? How do we take feedback, whether it be 2 weeks into a campaign or from year to year, and to try to strive to add new things to the campaign? How can we incent our employees to donate? How can we get more people to show up for the walk? And, probably even more importantly, how do we get individuals educated about what our mission is, what the March of Dimes mission is, and then how we can kind of bring those two together so we can really add some value across the board. So again, just to sum up the captain's piece, it's a critical role across any of the locations, or if you're just one location, to really have that strong leader who's organized, energetic, and is really going to push the agenda so we can really make some things happen positively for the March of Dimes. Now, moving on to walker recruitment and online dollars. Again, this is where the organization piece comes in. And what I always recommend when running these type of campaigns is starting with a really detailed strategy as far as how we're going to encompass these things. Typically, what we like to do is to really have a strong communication strategy. All different locations, if you look at a group like Cigna where we're in multiple states and multiple cities across the country, each office is unique in their abilities. Some are better to communicate through email, where other organizations may be very positive to do it, where they have a lot of face-to-face type activities. What we try to encourage, even across Pennsylvania and across the country, is figure out the best vehicle, and it could be multiple vehicles to communicate with your employees. And with that communication strategy is breaking it up into parts. So what we like to do is to say have a strong opening kickoff for the events, have a steady stream of events and communication throughout the campaign, and then really make a huge push at the end before the walk to get that online donor registration there, and even post follow-up to make sure everyone follows through on their fundraising activities. So that communication strategy is huge. And what we do is we try to solicit volunteers from across the organization that have communications backgrounds to help us with that. Again, Mark mentioned earlier about the walkers participate. We are trying to be as inclusive as possible. Some folks are busy. They may not be able to attend the walk, but we try to make the registration easy through the online site. We also offer individuals that can do it on a face-to-face basis. And if they need to do it virtually, we can handle that as well. Speaking of additional things that we like to do in order to get increased participation in walkers is we like to offer different incentives. There are a lot of generous people and companies throughout the area, whether it be in Philadelphia, Pennsylvania, or across the country, that are willing to donate gifts that we can incent our employees to participate. A couple of the things that we've done in the past at our national level, we actually incented employees that if they registered and donated $100 by a certain point of time, that they would be in the running for airline tickets, 2 round-trip airline tickets. In Philadelphia, we just auctioned off for registration. If they did it by a certain date, a certain dollar amount, we incented employees for a drawing for an iPad mini. These are donated items that the steering committee worked through to obtain, and then we look at that to say, well, what's the incentive for the individual? And we're always trying to think, well, how can we get someone to get more engaged and to even think about it? And what I can tell you, in the day and a half after we sent that communication out, we had 45 people actually sign up in that time period just from a simple communication offering that up. So those are some things that we can definitely do. I mentioned the senior leadership piece, which I talked about. Again, that's a key piece in order to get the donations and the online registrations up. Mark, from his team, he is consistently sending out communications across his organization to get involved. You know, we want groups. He talked about success stories in Glendale. We also have a lot of success stories. Our Pittsburgh office has been absolutely phenomenal with participation with their office and getting people there. And again, it starts with the senior leadership down and then having our grassroots effort for employees on their way up. And then the last thing that I'd like to touch on for recruitment is key thing is that last push. If you kind of look at the process when individuals get engaged for fundraising activities and campaigns, there's usually a big burst in the beginning and it may level off a little bit, and there's a huge push at the end. What we've tried to do is to try to level that off to do activities, whether it be an auction, whether it be selling of like jean stickers for the March of Dimes or plush toys. We try to keep that consistent throughout, but really try to focus on that last push before the walk, where we'll up our communications. We'll actually have face-to-face where we can, where we'll have individuals that are what I would say champions or floor site coordinators literally visit everyone's desk to say, hey, March of Dimes walks this weekend. You know, if you haven't already donated or fundraised, please do so. So we'll get down to that grassroots type of effort to really get our employees to get behind it. A couple other things I want to touch on, the ambassadors and how we make things a big deal in the company. The ambassador program, I think, is fantastic, and a lot of other folks have talked to it as well, because what it really does, it puts a personal touch to the March of Dimes campaign. I can tell you I attended a fantastic event a few months ago. It was the March of Dimes Shining Star Awards in Philadelphia at the Westin, and they actually had some vignettes of a couple of stories of individuals and that, you know, had premature birth and what that meant. And having that personal touch and really tying that, whether it's a story that, say, Mark told or something that I have an experience with, it really kind of brings things together. And it's amazing what people will do if they really can get educated about what the March of Dimes does. And having those ambassadors that are willing to tell their story, I think that goes a long way. A few years ago, we actually were fortunate enough to have a Cigna employee be, you know, the national ambassador for the March of Dimes. And at a local level, they actually asked me to tell my story as far as, well, what happened, what's your situation, how your kids are doing today. And I just think it's fantastic. Like, any chance I get to share the story, to educate people what the March of Dimes does, I think it really goes a long way, rather than just keep it, you know, at a higher level. It says, well, we're raising money, we want to donate this. That personalization, I think, really drives things through, and what we try to, foster with all of our communications and our messaging to our employees. And then last, I just want to touch on a couple other things before I can open up for some questions. But how do we make this a big deal? I think Mark touched on it. Getting your CEO involved, having incentives such as group with the highest participation. We'll have a visit from the CEO for lunch. That is a great thing. And a group like Glendale has done such a fantastic job increasing that, and we're hoping to do that across our Pennsylvania offices. I can tell you, like for something that we're doing this year, which our Connecticut office has done for a number of years, but in Philadelphia, we're actually going to be doing an online auction of prizes that were donated, and they're very good. We have Eagles tickets for Philadelphia fans, Phillies tickets, and a bunch of other great gifts to get people engaged that way, where you can actually bid online. We'll have it open for about a week or so right before the walk, where they can go and do that. So not everybody is going to say, well, I'm going to sign up for the walk or do this. So we're trying to offer different options to people so they can get engaged. In addition to that, different locations have various events. Like they may have bake sales, or they may have hoagie sales, or things of that nature. So individual groups, and it's that power of one. That one individual can really drive an office, or those two individuals can drive an office to make it a big deal. And we also like to have a little bit of a friendly competition. I think that's always helpful as well. So with the work that we're doing with my chairing across the PA offices, I meet with them regularly, and then you can have some friendly banter going back and forth between offices to say, hey, the Philadelphia office, we're already 20% ahead of where we were last year. And then I've actually had some conversations with our Pittsburgh counterparts, and they're a little bit behind because their walk's a little bit later, but they're saying, oh, don't worry about that. We'll be able to supersede what Philadelphia does. I think that healthy competition between teams, between individuals, and between offices is something else that can be really successful, because at the end of the day, the March of Dime campaign is a big deal. At Cigna, we make it a big deal, and we really just want to put our best foot forward and try to get better each year to add that value. So with that, I hope everyone thought that, the kickoff that Mark did and also some of the details we have done over the years with best practices is beneficial to you. And with that, I'd like to open it up to any questions that you may have.
So what questions does anyone have? Please just speak up.
Joe, I have a quick question. Just examples of how your senior leadership can get involved?
Yes. A couple of the things that we've done, and I'll give you a couple quick examples, is after we've met with a lot of our individuals on a one-on-one type basis, a lot of times what our senior leaders will do is actually send out communications to their individual teams asking them there for support coming directly. We actually just sent one out yesterday. Our CIO, Mark Boxer, who runs our entire systems group, he has actually sent communications out to his team. The other thing that we also offer is for steering committee members to actually go and speak at senior leaders' team meetings. So if they have a large group of employees on the phone, we will actually sit in those meetings and actually present this to the employees to get that support. The other thing that our senior leaders do is they'll often donate and present, like, say, prizes that we can use as incentives for the organization, so that we can do an online auction, or that we can do, various things to incent employees to participate in the walk and to donate dollars.
Yeah, Joe, I would just add in, at various times we've had executive fundraising challenges gone directly to the very senior leaders to sort of solicit, a donation from them. We found over time that they're very busy. They get focused on other things. Sometimes they miss the communications. And we, about 2 years ago, started a program where we went directly to them each and said, can you, we'd like you to make a minimum, $1,000 donation. I think that the year that I did that, we raised somewhere between $20,000 and $25,000 in addition to the funds. The other pieces of some of the things that we do have executive challenges where this sounds a little silly, but it helps to raise awareness and show the commitment of the executives. But having, a challenge of the bands, or a fashion show where senior executives sort of compete against each other and help draw in an audience, and one of the local affiliated TV stations comes in and or radio stations comes in and does the announcing and again helps to bring that awareness and the message to make sure that folks are hearing it and get engaged.
Great. Any other questions?
Joe, if there's a new team that's coming on rather late, what do you think are some of the most important things that they should focus on?
What I would say, we actually have this situation within our Pennsylvania chapter where we had an acquisition of a team, which is a group called HealthSpring that was recently come into the Cigna family. And they came in a little bit late as far as the start and they're part of the Philadelphia Walk. So what I would say is to really focus on the things that you can do, which is mainly with a new group coming in, a strong communication strategy. And one of the things that we did to partner with that organization is to make sure that they got a lead set up quickly, got a steering committee set up, and then we shared all of our communication strategy with that team so they weren't having to start it fresh. And really trying to pick their spots of what are the things that they can do. They're a location that's close to our Philadelphia office but not fully integrated with it. So we were working with them in order to, find out what are the best things. And even though they came on a little bit late, they are going to drive some activities through their office, have communications. They're going to be part of our online auction and things of that nature. So to me, it's just really identifying what are the key things that the office can do in a short period of time if they came on late, focus on those, and then try to execute on them the best way you can.
Very good. Any other questions? Okay, I guess there are no, and we're right at time. So I really want to thank Mark and Joe for their wisdom and their time and their commitment to March of Dimes and March for Babies. Cigna is a fantastic partner for March of Dimes, and as Mark was saying, 19 years and millions of dollars. So thank you to Cigna and to Joe and Mark, and really appreciate everyone joining the call today, and thank you for your part in raising money for March of Dimes and our vital mission. So thank you again, and have a great event.
You too. Thank you for your time.
Thank you.
Bye-bye.
Thank you.